Hello and welcome to this edition of The Interview. Women were at the forefront of celebrations in support of the September 5, 2021 coup in Guinea. For many, it offered a fresh opportunity for justice for victims of rights violations in over a decade of turmoil in the country. A notable incident is the September 28, 2009 Stadium Massacre in the capital, Conakry. According to human rights campaigners, over 150 people died in that incident when security forces opened fire at demonstrators calling for then junta leader Captain Mousa Dadis Camara not to break his promise of not contesting the 2010 election. Scores of women were brutalized and raped. Alpha Conde regime, despite taking some initial measures, failed to prosecute suspected perpetrators. Some Guineans want the new junta to fulfill this decade-long desire. But 7 months after the coup, what are the prospects of this happening? What do women even think about the transition process? These are among questions we put to gender activist Fatou Souare Hann, Executive Director of WAfrica, in our third video report on the political situation in the country. Mrs. Hann speaks about concerns of Guinean women in the ongoing transition process and long-standing issues emanating from the 15 years of political upheaval in the country. She starts by explaining what WAfrica means and what it does.
WAfrica stands for Women of Africa. It's a woman, not to say feminist NGO. I'm also a member, or WAfrica is also a member of the GRIF. GRIF stands for Groupe de Réflexion et d'Influence des Femmes, meaning it's a sort of think tank and influential group for women in Guinea.
Okay, Fatou, 7 months since we got to into this phase that Guinea is. I mean, you call it a transition, and I would like to know what you think from a gender point of view, what you think about the change in the first place.
Well, in the first place, we were quite relieved because the reality that we were going through with the previous regime was, as first of all, as human rights defenders, right? Because we also human rights defenders, particularly defending women's human rights. We're seeing that there were a lot of violations. Women were jailed during for some period. They were persecuted, and also there was a lot of violence around. And when there is violence overall in a country, the violence against women also increases. So the environment was not very healthy, we would say, for women. And so for the whole of the population in general, anyways, it was kind of a relief for us to see that new regime come and the old regime fall.
Yeah. So I ask almost everybody I've spoken to this. It's a thorny question. Now, we all want democracy and we want change through democratic means.
Right.
It's unusual what we have seen in Guinea, in Mali, where people come out and celebrate change by the barrel of the gun. I would like to know what you think. We saw similar things, like I said. I'd like to know what you think about that. The fact that we had to change by the barrel of the gun.
Well, it's not an ideal situation, obviously. And, it's not a first time for Guinea. So that's the most painful part, that we went through a similar period and transition not even 15 years ago. So it feels like an eternal restart of, hope for democracy and a democratic regime. But to tell you the truth, we felt at some point that this was the only issue out, because as we've been talking of building democracies, we have not been playing the game, and that is not what has been happening. And so when it does not happen, if there is a way or if there are means to, to get rid of what we are into that some people want to call democracy that is not, then unfortunately we would have to accept what comes. And for this time, we had to accept. And unfortunately, it was a betterment. It was a better. So it's not ideal. We would wish and we would like for, our country to be going through democratic transitions. But, this is, I guess, for myself, I wouldn't say it's the price to pay, but I think that, no democracy, no country has built itself on a straight line of a straight line of improvement. There's always been, up and downs. I often take the example of France. France got rid of their royalty in 1789. That was the big revolution. But they went back into royalty. It took them about 100 years to be effectively a democracy. So I think that Africa and Guinea in particular is going through these times where they're going to have up and downs before building that the democracy democracy also, is it the model that we want and that is appropriate, or is it something that is important and that we haven't imported and that we haven't been able to adapt to a level that it would actually keep working for us and then be stable? Maybe it's unstable because it's not the model that's working for us.
So in any case, the change came in with high expectations. As you said, there were a lot of issues that were happening, which made Guineans yearn for change. Now it came, and there are expectations. The transition is on. For some, it has taken too long. I'd like to know again, from your point of view, what you think about the current pace of the transition.
Yeah, I wouldn't say, it's been 7 months. 7 months is a long time, but it's also not such a long time. So it's true that we are starting to worry a bit and to be doubtful of the intentions, because pretty much as the junta came, we thought that yes, there are huge reforms and there are huge things to be done, but and that only a military junta can do, a regime can do. The civilians haven't been able to do it. So there are few projects that we thought they had to work on, but not too many. And definitely, we don't think that it should take too much time. And what we've seen is that as time is going, they're starting to take on more and more projects that are not necessarily things that we're expecting for them to do. We are expecting for them to pass on, and before passing on, to take care of certain things that are fundamental for us to keep going. We're starting to be worried about the time that it's taking, and also the actions that are being taken. I'll give one example that a lot of people have been talking about, and really, as a woman, that's the way I feel about it. Renaming the airport. We need to rename the airport within a transition, and even more when there is so much controversy around the name that was given to that airport. And not saying that I have anything against it. The question is it the time? Is it the time, considering that after all, maybe not as many generations as we would want have passed by since what we know of, the regime that we named the airport after the president that we named the airport after, and what has happened during his presidency. So I think that these are little things, but these are what I call distractions. So we don't want to be too impatient, but I'm not personally looking at the pace itself. I'm looking at the action and the acts that are being brought by the junta. As they came, we were very happy, and we had, like you said, high expectations. But we also understand that there are certain things that it would be good for them to do, because we understand that civil governments or civil regime haven't been able to do it. So we're expecting for them to treat certain things, but there are certain things also that we don't feel they should be working on. And also we feel that we should have a clear idea of what the objectives are, what they are going to do, and then to give us a timeline, because obviously we don't want to remain like this for too long, let's say, because we feel that as a military regime, and we're talking of experience, the longer it lasts, the more we get into the risk of certain situation that we want to avoid. So really, we're not looking so much at how long it's taken. I mean, 6 months after all might sound like a lot of time, but hey, we just spent about 2 years with a third mandate that was kind of painful. So we're trying to, however, definitely we starting to worry about certain situations that we are seeing, and certain certain projects that they are getting into that we don't feel is really their role. What we expect today is for them to come out with clear objectives and a clear plan, timed, so timely plan, for them to finish this transition and to hand over whatever power to a new democratically elected president.
Okay, so let's talk about female representation in the transition.
Right.
What have you seen?
Well, we're very happy at first to see that one of the engagement from this regime was to actually hold on to quota of 30%. And at first we thought that they were going to be able to follow that engagement. As time has gone, definitely they have not. We've had actually hoped that they would go for what was previously there, which is 50-50. And we thought that 30 was not enough, but at least we could do with it. We could live with it. Unfortunately, the 30% are not being respected. If you look at the government, yes, we were a little bit under, not too far, but could have done. I think they could have done better. And also in the CNT, which is the National Transition Council, they have indeed respected the 30%, but two things. Number one, it was by corporation, and some of the corporation did not respect it. Unfortunately, my corporation, which is civil society, had only 1 seat out of 7, which I find to be a shame. And so it wouldn't be on the junta, you can put it. But one thing I thought was going to show good faith in that question of women representation was to have a woman as the president of that council. I mean, you have a man as prime minister. Obviously, the military is a man's world, even though they have some women in there that we very much appreciate. And then the governor of Conakry is a woman. But seriously, I mean, out of the 3 main bodies today, the 3 of them have men. And really, we feel that that transition council, national council, could have been led by a woman. It wasn't too difficult. So very disappointed about that, and doubtful in the end about the real engagement on women representativity. They're trying, they're showing good faith, but they could do better, we feel.
Okay, so I think we spoke earlier about time, the transition period. Now, this is going to be a major issue, especially when ECOWAS refocuses on Guinea. Presently, they are preoccupied with Mali and Burkina Faso and all that. They're going to come back. They initially gave 6 months. Everybody know that wasn't reasonable enough. I would like to know from your viewpoint what you think would be a reasonable period.
I said it before. I think it's not about time. It's about what we want to do. And I think that once they have clearly said what they want to do, the time should not be more than, it shouldn't take more than 2 years. And what you have to understand is that it's like project management for me. When you give yourself 2 years, you spend 3 at it, right? So if you start by giving 4 or more, then you're here forever. And then you're here for a term where you would have been elected. Come on, they were not elected. We are very grateful of what has happened. For whatever reason it's happened, and definitely it's a relief. We are relieved, but we want to move on. Guinea needs to really move on now. And if they want to give us that chance, they should not take too long, because the longer they take, and we're talking of experience with juntas and with military regime, the more we are putting ourselves at the risk of, certain things happening that we don't want to see happen, right? We recall not long ago, as I mentioned earlier, this is not our first transition. This is actually the second one in not so long, because 10 years ago or 12 years ago, we were going through the same thing. What has happened 12, 13 years ago should be a lesson for them. They don't want to stay too long. They don't want to take a chance for things to go sour or anything. They want to get the mission done, and the mission has to be clarified. We're not here to rename places or you name it. Or actually, if they want to rename places after a woman's name, then I'm okay with it. And it wouldn't take too much time. But no, seriously, get the objectives, get the mission, and time the mission and finish it. And definitely, I don't think that it should take more than 3 years. But like I said, I'm not about the time. I'm about what has to be done. If in 3 years they tell us, look, we didn't finish, we need 3 more months, 6 more months, okay. But if from the get-go it's taking them so long and they're not very clear about what we are doing and how long it's going to take, then we start being worried. And then we wait for ECOWAS to come and say whatever they want, and then the international community, and you name it. But we don't want to get there. We want to kind of solve it among ourselves. And I think that among ourselves, we should be responsible and tell each other, us as civil society, whatever, citizens, and then the military regime that's here, that, hey, listen, it shouldn't take too long. We need to move on.
Finally, we are talking about the appropriate project they should embark on. The key here is transition the country, conduct election, get a democratically elected government. But there is a large number of Guineans who have been calling for justice for victims. Some are looking beyond the Conde regime, the Dadis era, and some are concerned about the immediate past 11 years. And this is important for you as a gender activist, because among those who are looking beyond the Conde regime, there is an issue that concerns women. Some women were said to have been raped. What is your position?
This is a very hot topic, and hot and hard topic, because indeed, like you said, the junta should limit itself, but there are certain things in Guinea that we've been waiting for too long to solve. And if we are getting at that time when they can do it, they should do it. Obviously, the Conde era tried to work on that issue of, the rape and the massacre that happened on the previous junta regime, the Dadis regime. And people are looking for truth, and people are looking for closure also. And they haven't been able to get it in that previous regime, because obviously at the end of the process, because there was a process, things were moving forward, but then there were real roadblocks at the end of the process. And so I think that the previous regime was not able to break these roadblocks. Now that this regime is here, if this is one thing they can do, I think that they will greatly help the country turn at least that page, because there are so many pages that are open in Guinea that we haven't closed. We need closure. We need to, and for that closure, we need justice. They came saying that justice is what is going to guide their action. Well, we had a woman minister of justice who has disappeared. We still don't know where she is. And we now more and more wondering if really justice is what's guiding them. If you consider that, yes, they are going after a lot of economic crimes, they should not forget that there were also a lot of what we call blood crimes that also need the same attention. Too many deaths, and I call free death in this country, and too many women have suffered the violence, rape, and you name it, of the previous regimes with an S. And so the Dadis case is very specific. People need closure. And if there is one thing that they can add to their agenda that us as women, we would accept, and I don't think it should take too long, because as I mentioned, I think that the previous regime has already done most of the process. We really to the end right now. It's about 20% left, I think. If they can run that 20% as women, as a women organization, as a human rights organization that has been looking at this case, that was here and working on the response to the victims at the time, I think that would be, I mean, if they have to live with something, living with that for us women, I think that we will not forget them. Yeah, so they can add that to whatever they're doing, not too much more. I know that everybody is going to have their revendication, but this is that one that I think is very important.